Women's empowerment, women leading. This is a podcast for women by women, asking the question, are women leading? Join me for the conversation at Tari, proudly brought to you by Gender and Media Connect, a place where we talk about women's issues and you have your voice and say. Hey guys, welcome back again to the podcast, Are Women Leading? My name is Tari and this particular series is brought to you by Gender and Media Connect, Women's Coalition of Zimbabwe, Research and Advocacy Unit, as well as SWAG in partnership with the Embassy of Sweden in Harare. It's a place where women talk about issues affecting women, and you can always have your say at Tari at GMC. So without much further ado, we welcome my first guest. Her name is Celia Rukato. She is the founder of Ndialo Restaurant, a restaurant that specializes in Western cuisine in Harare, Zimbabwe. Celia, good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you in studio. This conversation has been long overdue. And today we're talking about the impact of the domestic setting on the female, particularly female leadership. And I'm curious, what did the domestic setting teach you as a restaurant owner, as a leader in female leadership?
Well, there's two points of view that I would want to tackle with this point because it's a huge one.
Yeah.
In terms of my upbringing, I think what got me into business is the fact that we grew up quite independent. My mother was someone that worked outside the country. So there would be times where we were home alone, and I'm the oldest, and I had to make sure I run the household while she's away. And she also had to look for creative ways of parenting from a distance, even before social media and before WhatsApp and all that. So it was the home phone. That's how she would make sure we're home.
Okay, so make sure that you're home. Okay, so I like that because Panama child-headed households. And because your mom is out of the country, technically when we're describing child-headed households, you would not be a part of it, although technically you were. And this is, so let's talk about those creative forms of parenting, because traditionally we expect that the mom is going to be there in the home, not necessarily the dad is there with the kids. So in your situation, it's kind of different, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And my parents separated when I was in grade 3, and from maybe I would say grade 7 onwards, it was generally me as the older sibling managing the younger siblings in the house. It would just be communicating, okay, this is what we need to order, this is the activities that we need to go to school for, and managing the system that way. But also, I learned a lot of discipline from that because I knew that I had to be home by a certain time.
Wow.
Because
the kids are counting on you.
The kids are counting on me, and the phone is going to ring.
Yeah.
And it's mom that's somewhere outside the country checking that we are all at home and not up to mischief.
What did you make of the decision by your mom to say, I'm going to work outside the country? Because we've got many women who will say, I can't leave my kids. It's heartbreaking. Or, so I can't really pursue my dreams. But your mom decided it was perfectly fine for her to pursue, her own thing. And she has established herself in her own industry. And you turned out just fine.
Yeah, I mean, it was a conversation that we actually had very directly. She said, I want you guys to have the best opportunities. For me to be able to afford those opportunities for you, I have to do work that may require that I'm outside the country 70% of the time.
Wow.
So you want to do dance, you want to do modeling, you want to do all these things, they need to be paid for. So can we agree that you'll be disciplined, I'll be away, but we know that we're working together towards something that's bigger than just me being away from home.
Yeah, okay. I like that. Firstly, because it shows Kutipani a level of respect in the relationship connection. And the second part is you're technically a child who's being told to do this. And then you've got your friends who are like, oh, we need to be happy, to fara and all. You can't do that. So how did you manage to balance or bridge the two? Because you want to be happy, but you also want to be a child parent.
Yeah, I think, I think the importance was the communication between the parents and the kids. It's not that I was perfect all the time.
Of course.
But it was always, whenever I stepped out of line, it would be a discussion like, okay, this is what you say you want to be. This is where you say you want to go. In terms of your actions, do you feel that this is the path that you're going to end up on? So I ended up even amongst my friends being the overly responsible one. That's like, guys, let's not do that.
So pane a structure, and I like that way of parenting. Wakanganisa pakati, do you think, you understand the consequences of your path and your decisions and all of that? But going back to, this was your mom who was doing this. In traditional households, it's the dad. We're going to have to talk to dad and hear what he says. Well, dad says no, so we can't. Or dad says this and that's how it's going to be. I would have wanted you to do this, but your dad varamba and all sorts of things. What did that teach you about gender and dynamics? When you're looking at, okay, I think we're onto something here.
Yeah, I think that was always the interesting thing, because it was weekends. Every other weekend, we'd go and visit my dad. And we had a way of manipulating the parents. So we knew if we wanted to go out, dad is a little bit more lenient, but also in terms of the day-to-days, dad isn't always there. So it can be a little bit easier to say, you know what, you can go out and hang out with your friends. If you don't know that maybe Celia wasn't doing her homework during the week and was misbehaving during the week. So it was always that game that I consciously, and it wasn't that I was doing it not knowing. I consciously knew that, okay, my dad, I plan around my weekends and social activities. For the weekend, I'm with my dad. Mm-hmm. And then the weekend where I'm supposed to be at home with the siblings is the weekend where I'll stay low. And
I'll be the mom child. Okay. And then there's the part Yakuti, other households. Kuna mama and Dizzy. And mama chose to, I want to use this word loosely, sacrifice herself, her dreams, and her life to be there present with her children, because some women feel like that, like I can't leave my children. Mm-hmm. But then you've got your mom who says, Sha, I need to live my life and achieve my dreams at the same time, making sure that you guys, we can afford the lifestyle that you want. And did you ever have any resentment, Kuti, but, I'm not supposed to be in this situation. You know what I mean? I didn't choose for you people to divorce, and now I'm finding myself with all this responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. And it's things that, I only understood in retrospect. But during, I was like, okay, why don't I come from that white picket home? White picket fence home. And there was resentment, like when you see other people's mothers
picking them up from
school or attending their events, attending their plays, because there was so much that we would do as children, like our extracurricular activities. But my dad would come and watch, but my mom, I think, managed to watch me perform once. Yeah. And it's like, okay, so do you really even know who I am? Like, as in, and who I'm developing to be, becoming,
My parents are also divorced, so I experienced a fair share of being, and I'm the firstborn, experienced a fair share of being, I am the parent in this house. If you don't like it, ship out, you know what I mean? So you've got the kind of thing. So my relationship with my sisters is interesting because I am a sister at the same time. I'm sort of a parentish type of person to them, particularly with the younger one. So you'd have certain things happening, like, she's had her first period. And she's telling me, I'm like, oh God, what am I supposed to do? And I'm sure it's, naturally scary for even someone who's a grown-up, but I'm a child and I've got to deal with this. So for me personally, I found it to be interesting. I got really independent at a very young age. I got to know exactly what it is that I wanted. And, I'm not going to mince about things because I understand mama consequences. But okay, you and I suppose are not necessarily maybe your typical examples, because you've got people who come from, I don't want to go back to Zimbabwe mama na daddy. But kumbakuna mama na daddy, in our culture, in our setting, the example, a boy and a girl being raised in a home, you'll find plates. Mukomana, you can play, Ronnie, you can play with the PlayStation, it's okay. Or Ronnie wants to go out with his friends and he can afford to do that. What do you suppose that does for that young girl? Perhaps you and I never had a choice because you knew plates because the world is waiting for you.
I think there are levels of resentment that can build from that, but also I think it affects your idea of what your identity is supposed to be or what your use is as a woman. You may only see yourself, or there's two extremes. You may only see yourself as someone that is only a good woman if you're in the kitchen and cooking, or the resentment may push you all the way to the other end, where you feel like you need to put yourself in more masculine positions because you can end up overly aggressive.
Yeah.
And I think there is a way to find a balance between the chores and things that need to be done.
Let's talk about the aggressive female, because
Yeah.
I have seen some angry, aggressive females. I mean, there's this one woman that I've constantly always asked myself, what happened? Because, she's very aggressive. She is in a leadership position, and I really don't understand. Some people that I've also interacted with have shared, maybe women want to be like men.
Mm.
And this is the problem. When you women get into these positions of power, you start acting like men. But is this really the way that we should go? Should a woman aspire to be a man when she gets into a leadership role?
I don't think that's how it's supposed to be. And I think what we're supposed to do is create a space for us as women within the capitalist system. But traditionally, the capitalist system was run by men. So in terms of what the templates are of what a good leader is, it was typically a man. And that, I think, is what makes women feel like they have to act masculine in order to lead. But you can lead in a very feminine way. And there are advantages to our femininity that I think we need to put forward. I definitely used to be one of those angry type of
angry black
woman.
Yeah.
It's not good for the blood pressure. It's not good for the skin. It's, there's a way that we can balance our femininity with getting things done.
I like looking at it from that point of view. This does not serve me. It is not good for my blood pressure, because now I'm going to end up in the hospital. I can't actually perform and do the things that I want to do. But unfortunately, we don't see it that way. I've gone to some of these government departments. I've seen some angry people. What happened to you? I wonder if maybe apana conscientization and education of it's okay for you to be a female. It's okay for you to embrace your femininity. But the thing is, we've got some people who look at women and say, women are weak. Women are menos. So if you say you're wearing, I don't know, I don't like using this color pink. You're wearing a pink dress because, the world sometimes uses it as the feminine color. You're weak. You can't lead, So instead, now we're trying to be like men, copying the template. Speaking of copying templates in our society, and I would say in most positions, the people who lead are men. Even if you look at the top companies, very few women who are there. So I have to wonder, do we have the role models? We say, oh, wow, she leads in a very feminine way. And I like how she does things. And I also want to do the same thing.
I think we have to sort of then define what our idea of success is. And I think with age, I've also redefined that for myself as well. Is it that career is everything, and capitalist type of career, career where you are in the limelight? Is that what success is? So I think we need to sit back and like redefine what success is, because it's not always that working for, the top 100 companies in the world means that you're successful, And I think what the corona period and the pandemic has sort of taught people is that, there's more to life than just trying to grind yourself to death. Yeah. And we also need to acknowledge that, what makes us different, what makes the difference between men and women is also our hormone balances.
Yeah.
We can't take away from that. And I was speaking to someone the other day who was saying that, I'm in my 50s now, and I'm finally understanding what PMS is. I always used to disregard it and try to ignore it.
Wow.
And try to fake my way through periods where, because my hormones are changing, I am feeling different.
Yeah.
And it's not that PMS means you're angry or aggressive. It is just that hormones are changing in your body and they affect the way you feel.
I never had, I would like to think I never had PMS, but then I got through a period in my life where I was on a particular form of contraception, and literally I would roll on the ground in pain. But I have to go to work because I need to perform. I've got to have a smile on my face because this is what it is, So luckily I've got a female boss, and I had to say, this is what is happening to me. If I step on the ground, literally I'm shaking. But unfortunately, I think in many settings, women don't have that relationship where you can walk up to your boss and say, boss, I'm having the cramps it's my period, people will make fun of you like, it's that time of month again, and not really, take it seriously, So I wish we could have more open conversations. But I want to go back to the point where you mentioned in the household, you can either go to the extreme of being this angry woman, or you see your value as being in the kitchen. And let's talk about women who do not see their value tied to the kitchen, the women who don't want to cook, the women who don't cook my plates, the women who do not want to do the domestic chores.
I think it's important just overall as a human being, woman, man, to be able to do chores. It should be a choice that you don't do it. And I think I respect those women because they're in touch with what they want. They're not going to end up complaining that, oh my gosh, I'm forced in the kitchen all the time, which some women who don't express how they feel towards doing certain chores end up being. I think the key is just making sure the work gets done. It doesn't have to be you that physically does the work. I like
alternative methods to running a household. I don't necessarily need to be the person anu ngachisuka or achichaira, but I want to stay in a clean household. And can I allow myself to be? It's interesting that you mentioned this woman in her 50s, because she understood PMS. As I have grown older, I have come to realize, now that I'm in my 30s, I've come to realize, no, Tari, there's certain things and you know what? I will tell you. Guys, can you do it? I've got sons, so it's an interesting dynamic because I've had the conversation with him. We all stay in the house. So you also need to be responsible. I'm not just going to do this because I'm your mom. You're going to have to live and stay with the world, and you have to function in this co-space. But in the meantime, mother, I will cook and you will clean. So it's important. And I like that. When I was in my 20s, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do these dishes. Oh my gosh, I'm going to cook. And now I'm resenting the people who are around me. Well, what have they done? Speak up.
And did you communicate? Did you communicate it?
No, I did not. I felt like I had to do it. I'm a partner. Before the crack of dawn, and do this.
No, and there's so much to us as people and as women particularly than our gender,
Yeah.
And I think that's also something that media has. I mean, it works for a capitalist system, to categorize people so that even in terms of selling products, you can predict and tell that, okay, this is a woman, this is a man, and all that. But I think as we grow and move through different levels of experience in life, you start to realize that, I'm more than just what I physically am. I'm also a spiritual being. There are elements to me that are more than just what is on the outside. And I think the communication is the key part. And in relationships even, I think it should be things that you discuss at the beginning. I don't like washing dishes. So that it's not that you changed.
Yeah, I've got someone that I know who says, on our first date, I told him, and he chose, and he understands that I just don't like doing that. But a part of me also feels like for a lot of women, we pretend, and because I need the ring on the finger, and so as soon as I get in there, I just need to, and then maybe my true colors also to come out. And I've always thought that panika shortchanging of things that happen there. If you can't really accept who I am, I'm not the type of woman who's going to cook every day. Sometimes I want to wake up at 1:30 p.m. Can we allow this to be? Now, there are certain people who think that you and I, as we're having this conversation, it's like, and people should not be behaving like this because behaves in this way. What would you have to say to those people?
Well, I mean, I guess that's their opinion. We probably won't get along or hang out. But I mean, we're all entitled to our opinions. But I think really there's a lot of, I would believe from my perspective that those types of people also have a lot of growing to do and just learning what the human experience is, because many things happen. You could have your wife that is always cooking and washing dishes and you never spend time in the kitchen. But what happens when she falls ill? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I think it's about growth, and it doesn't hurt to learn how to do something. So I think as guys, pick up the plates and you know?
Yeah. So you are a restaurant owner. I mentioned that at the beginning of this podcast that you own your restaurant, which is West African cuisine. And let's talk about your path to entrepreneurship, deciding that you want to start your own business. What motivated that? And if you can tie it to your domestic setting. I mean, you were in charge already, managing these little younglings, and now here you are doing your business.
I've always sort of been pushed by a no excuse type of philosophy.
Yeah.
So it's not something I wouldn't have even said 5 years ago. I would have thought I was going to be a restaurant owner.
Wow.
It's not something that I ever really wrote down and planned in my diary or anything like that. But opportunities have presented themselves. And I'm like, if there's an opportunity for growth, yes has to be the answer. That's always my motto.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of lessons that you can learn even from failing while taking opportunities that may seem like they're too big for you or beyond
your capabilities.
Yeah, beyond your capabilities or your wildest dreams. So, I mean, when I still, before I became an entrepreneur, my first job was in Nigeria. I loved West African food, not from the beginning, but I was sort of forced into it. After a year of living there, I had no choice but to enjoy the dishes that were served there. There's only so much bread you can eat.
Yeah.
So I've always, wherever I go, I'm like, I miss my Nigerian food. I miss the food that I used to eat in Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So after getting into partnership on another business with the National Handcraft Center, there was an opportunity to take over and run a restaurant.
Wow.
So we're like, okay, we can use this space to teach people about different African cultures, because my background is finance and economics. In terms of Africa, we've just signed into, as Zimbabwe, we've signed into the Continental Free
Trade Area Agreement. Yeah.
Which means in 2063, if all goes well, everything is going to be open. Will we be able to know about other cultures? Will we know about other cultures? Will we be able to also express ourselves in terms of what our culture is?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are a small country. In terms of population, we don't make, I think Nigeria makes about 1/7 of the population in Africa. How will we make sure that we are not going to be diluted within the opening of the borders?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best way is to learn about other cultures and also see what we can do to improve and work on our own culture.
So in terms of fear, because there are a lot of people running fear. So women, for example, you can run the household, to wacha, to bika, to say, making sure that, the kids' lives are run properly. But when it comes to stepping outside the home, start your business, panika fear, can I do this? Am I equipped enough? Will the people support me? Did you ever go through that?
A lot. I go through it every day.
Yeah.
Because even in terms of communication, even with your employees, there's a certain level of respect that a man commands automatically just because he's a man, even before he opens his mouth. So you're trying to instruct people that come from homes where it's the man that is in charge, that leads. And you're trying to say, listen, this is not how we're going to do things. We need to do things this way. And there's an element of resistance that I always initially feel, but I think it's about perseverance and just consistency. So every day waking up and we're pushing towards that vision.
So I'm curious, Kuti, the people that you're leading, your workforce is predominantly female. Is this resistance from the females?
There are times where there is resistance, where also there's an element, and I think I'll call it cattiness amongst us women, where it's almost like instead of being inspired by another woman that's trying to do something, it's almost like I should be doing it because you are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And those are things that I've had to deal with, where it's like you're giving an instruction of what work needs to be done. And a person will be like, why don't you do it? You're also a woman. You can do it,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can see that. I don't think your age also helps the situation because you're young. In our culture, kind of mama munumukuru, then we can respect. Maybe ndiko go and she, so if she tells you to do something, then you can. Even pabasa, and but because you are the young boss, it's like, but who are you to tell me things like that? Have you had any encounters with also your female partners, husbands, boyfriends, for example? Because I know, Huti, panemanga instances where you have the boyfriend or the husband, just showing up because I want to check. Is that really true that happened or you were here?
Yes, that has happened, I think, I'd say 4 times. And
I was really hoping you'd say no, but okay.
like as within the restaurant industry, especially before the lockdown, we'd close late, sometimes around 11 p.m. And it would be the next morning, one of the husbands coming to the restaurant and being like, while the wife is sitting on the side, she's supposed to keep quiet now.
Okay.
My wife cannot be working until this late. It's not what a lady is supposed to do. And I'm not sure what the communication was, but I think there would be elements where, we've worked with a lot of ladies the way we've trained them from not having any skills to training them to be something. So I think even beyond just being the woman in the household, they were also not a breadwinner. And now you've got an opportunity where you're bringing money home and maybe even bringing more money than your husband. Those are the times where I've seen a lot of the husbands coming in. You're supposed to treat them special. You want to pull your wife out of work in the middle of a shift. And
so what do you do then? Because you're the boss and pabasa. So you know what? Your domestic issues really should be happening in the home and not here at work. But then again, I feel like if you don't say anything as a female boss, perhaps to correct him, Baba, this here can't happen, you are not helping this woman. And I'm not sure if you should help her in two ways. One, by telling her husband off, of which that will also have some consequences when she goes home. Or number two, to educate her. And I don't know if education is really what we need and is what is going to make a difference. Educate her. Because you're the one who signed the contract. You're the one who came here looking for a job. So whatever happens here is Jepanapa. And it is your responsibility to tell your husband that you just don't rock up at my workplace because you're going to cost me my job. Yeah,
that has always been the second has always been the mode that I've tried to work with, because also, again, with the fact that we're in a country where it's male dominated, if I as the boss sit them together and create a situation where
you're the mediator,
I'm the mediator, or I seem like I know more about their situation than
which I don't.
I'm like, okay, I might actually also be endangering this lady when she goes home, because we don't know how the husband will react. We'll be like, I don't get spoken to like that. Who did she think she was? So I've always pulled the ladies aside and said, okay, listen, you chose this opportunity in terms of what your situation is at home. I'm not sure what it is, and it's not that I don't care about it, but I don't think it has a lot to do with what joined us together here.
Yeah.
Could you make a decision in terms of how you want to go forward? But this cannot be happening. So can you please speak to your husband at home so that we're not dealing with these types of situations at the workplace?
Don't you find it sad that for a lot of women, they have to choose? Because do I want my career? Do I want my marriage? What do I want to do? You give this classic example. So many women in this country, not earning money, not being their own breadwinner. And they say, you can't even go into a store and buy yourself some underwear without talking to someone. You know what I mean? So now that you've got this opportunity, you have to go and speak to your partner. Is it okay if I go and work? And if he's uncomfortable with the situation, then you can't. And then so many dreams are lost. And yet, if you were to flip it, we've got so many men who are very successful, men who work outside the country, men who work long hours, and life is okay. The woman doesn't complain. So what will it take for us to get to that point of respect my hustle? I'm here with you. Just be confident that I am. Just respect me as a human being and my dreams.
I think the key is communication early on, because I think that's where a lot is lost. You get into a marriage without completely discussing what your vision for yourself is, because being married is only one component of who you are. You're so much. Have you communicated what your dreams are with your partner before you rush into getting married? Have you communicated what your aspirations are before you rush into getting married, and what the dynamic will end up being if you have to fulfill those dreams? There's responsibilities. Yeah. Okay. We have to look after the kids. We want to raise the kids. But after 5 years, is it okay for me to go back to school? Because that's what I've always wanted to do. Those are things that I think as women, we need to also vocalize early on in our relationships.
I have met so many women. Zimbabwe has one of the highest child marriages in the world. And we also have quite a range of, a huge number of young women also getting pregnant. In fact, the majority between 18 and 21 thereabouts. This is where the majority of women in Zimbabwe get married and they have the children and such. And I have wondered, this vision for yourself, do you have it? When I had my first child, I was 20 going on 21. And I was a completely different person from who I am now. I had no idea, a vision for myself. What are you talking about? But fast forward now, with enlightenment, with education and such and experiences, I realized, so I want to be able to do this. And I have to wonder, so when do we start to have these conversations about, you have a dream, okay? Because before you got married or before you had the children, you had dreams. And what happened to that person that you have? And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with you being a mom forever, right? But like you said, that's just one component of you.
I think it's a tricky one because, I would say at one level, it needs to also be it's something that needs to be a topic within school settings. But school isn't for everyone. So what happens to the people that don't really go to school and don't have access to information from that point of view? But I think it's something that needs to be discussed even as girls and boys are preteen even. That we don't have to stick to what the gender norms have been. You can be a male nurse. You can. And as a woman, you can be a pilot and still have a family. I think there is a way that we can balance it all. I do believe in having it all. I haven't figured it out yet, but I do believe that you can have it all.
I think you can have it all at different times in your life with the right support. This is where the alternative parenting, alternative household comes into place. We've got to be really creative around our dreams. So you talk about, okay, let's educate these children, so that when they do grow up, they will, view the world in a different kind of lens. I had this discussion with my son, and he said something about male leadership in the home, like, the head of the house is the man. And I said, sweetheart, look around here. I am the head of the house. And he's like, oh yeah, actually. And I said, you know what? I think it's important for you to realize and acknowledge at this stage that you will meet women who are like your mother, and you should not thwart her potential. Instead, you need to support her. Now, this is an issue that is big in a lot of relationships and a lot of households where the partner is not supportive. Because if the male partner sometimes supports the female, then udakuita kakuchenjeresa, uchazoda kunditonga, uchazoita run away from me, and then uchapenya, and then the people are going to see you. Saka, you know what? I don't want any of this nonsense. Can you just sit down?
I think in terms of men in general, they've never been taught about how it's possible to also lead from behind. You don't necessarily have to be the one that is in the forefront or the face for you to lead. There are different forms of leadership. And leadership has got, there's many facets to leading a household. It doesn't mean that you have to be, you can have a head of marketing, the CEO, head of procurement. They're all leading, but in different areas. And I think traditionally men were taught that leading means bring the breadwinner. And if you're not the breadwinner, then what do I become? How do I then do I demasculate myself by not being the breadwinner?
But it's not just an issue that affects men. It's also us women who view men as, but you're already head of household. How are you head of household if you're not buying the bread? So we start viewing these men perhaps who are not able to bring the bread on the table, which is a discussion for another day, as he's not really a woman. Earlier you mentioned about women who choose to lead in the household. Like, I'm okay being a woman at home. Now, I don't have a problem with that. Like I said, it's one of the facets to you, and that's okay, because raising children and all this is a full-time job, right? But you've got women now who are leading in certain spheres, capitalist spheres, who feel like, oh my gosh, really? Like, I'm not almost as if to shame these women who have chosen, I'm okay staying at home. I want to teach my children. I want to cook for my children, and I want to take care of my husband. Now, I know as a business owner and stuff, that's not you. That's not me either. Okay. I don't know. So what do you make of that type of woman?
I'm also just like, okay, why are you getting involved in somebody's household? You made a choice.
Yeah.
Allow people to make choices and live the life that they believe is the most fulfilling. And for you, you may be fulfilled by more of what the capitalist system would say success is. But also don't discount that there are other things that you may also be missing out on while you're on
at
that
work.
path. Yeah, while you're on that path to work, there's also a lot of growth that a person gets from running a household.
Absolutely.
So I think it should just never be people getting involved in other people's choices. People should be allowed to choose the type of life that they want. They should understand that there are consequences to every choice. There are things that you'll miss out on, but I don't believe that there's any right or wrong. The key is what makes you feel most fulfilled and where you feel you are
You're
offering the most
thriving.
impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there are women who will say, and I've noticed it's generally the women in our society who will say, "Mkazi chai aite zvoda kuita izvozvo." Anditi ikubasa kwacho kune mashaye panapa. Anditi imurume wenyu ari kuenda kubasa. He's buying the bread, he's buying everything, and he's doing this for you. But you're saying, I've got this dream. I want to run my restaurant, and all of this. She had her life. She made her choices. But when it comes to you and advising you, she's telling you that you are wrong. And I wonder, are we building or are we breaking the young women that we've got in our society? This lack of respect somewhat?
I would say it's a lot of breaking. I mean, I know in terms of before I fully became an entrepreneur, when I shared ideas with, I'll call her auntie out of respect, one of my aunts. She says, you romanticize life.
Oh my gosh, what does that look like?
I'm like, is it so wrong to want to dream for better than what I've seen or to want more than what
I have
right now? So I use that more as motivation. And I think there's nothing wrong with romanticizing life. Just know that it may not be an easy journey towards getting to that romantic
destination.
Yeah. And put in what it takes to get to the destination. But I think, again, what we need to build within a society is more of a support for our young ladies, because it's not easy in any sphere. It's not easy to be, the whole system even of marriage is not easy on a woman, in terms of how our traditions enforce things, and balancing that with the way the world is opened up and it's a flat world, more global. How do you balance keeping your culture and also being able to be the best that you can be?
Yeah. Speaking of culture, balancing of culture, women are generally, it is a patriarchal society, and women are under the men or under the men's leadership. But then you're there, you are leading in your space, Kubasa, you are the boss. And some of the women that I've spoken to, they've said, once I go into the house through the door, I wear a completely different hat. And I have to remember, and this boss, and I've wondered, is that the way to go? Are you putting yourself down when you do that? What are you feeding into at the same time? Maybe that is the norm, because when you're at work, you're the boss. When you're at church, you're a congregant. When you are at a football stadium, you're a fan, So I'm not quite sure how to handle that, because it seems that there is this notion in the public that when a woman particularly gains respect in, say, public office, or she's running a business and she's successful, how would it get you you can't tell anything, because she feels like, hey, please, I'm a business owner, I know stuff.
I think, like, as Africans, it's such a interesting time, because it can almost be crazy making between culture, religion, the capitalist system. Who's supposed to have the loudest voice?
Yeah.
I think the key, and it's one thing why I think even in terms of the restaurant space and the cultural space is important, is there, culture can evolve. It doesn't have to be rigid and fixed. And I think we all also pick and choose what our favorite elements of culture, or what our favorite elements of religion, or what our favorite elements of the capitalist system are. We need to know, again, that with any choice that we make, there will be consequences. And can those consequences, especially when you're trying to build a home with someone, can they be discussed up front so that you know what you're dealing with? And there won't be situations of you switched up and changed. And even if you do change, you're allowed to change as a person.
Yeah.
The key is to communicate it.
Do you suppose for a lot of women, they're able to, or they understand the power of their voice? They understand. I had this realization again in my 30s now that I have a choice. Really, I do. I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. I will not put, for example, my emotional health and my mental health in someone else's hands. Because again, you talk about needs, about consequences. I am the one who's going to feel the effects of these things. And so why am I doing this? But then again, we have a lot of women who feel like, no, but I can't say, it is what it is.
I think, we don't realize what the power of a voice is. And also we work a lot with assumptions. So like we assume that just because a man is acting in this way, he's not open to maybe learning a new way. And you'd be surprised.
You will. I have been surprised. I have been surprised by a lot of guys who have said, you know what, I don't even know some of these men that you're talking about who are not supportive of women. Because, in fact, one of my bosses always says that. He's like, Tari, you know what, I feel like what you can do, I can also do. So more power to you if you can. But because maybe we were raised in this way, the man is not going to be supportive, the man behaves a certain way, then I can't even bring it up. And because last year or 7 years ago, I didn't feel like doing this thing, if I bring it up, then it's not going to be well received. So I shut myself down before he shuts me down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And even like, I think the responsibility that guys need to have with each other is also to have these discussions outside of just, I'm not going to try to trivialize the discussions that guys have, but like instead of just, meeting up and hanging out over football, what spaces do guys have to discuss these types of things? You know, what the definition of what a man is, I don't think they have many spaces or safe spaces. Safe spaces within the community where they can, offload, because they also go through pressurizing situations, that whole thing of to be a man, you have to be the one that earns more and all that stuff.
The topic of this discussion is, are women leading? Well, the topic of the podcast is, are women leading? And the topic for this particular episode is the impact of the domestic setting on female leadership. Now, the domestic setting also affects the men themselves, how they pursue, how they view women or perceive women in the workspace. Because sometimes are you able to work together with a woman who's come into the boardroom and she says, no, man, we're not doing this? Or maybe she's the boss and she's telling you, no, Samson, this is not how it's going to go. Are you able to respect, or you're going to trivialize?
I think it comes, like one of my favorite quotes, it's not exact, but they say man's greatest weakness is that he was once a child. So a lot of what we've learned and we've been conditioned into are things that we saw and emulate from what we saw our parents do, let's say, or the households that we grew up in. We never engage the information that we gathered during those young ages and say, does this make sense? Is the way I'm thinking just what I've been told and has been something that was repeated over and over again? Or is it something that could be improved upon? And I think on both ends, it's something that people need to ask themselves. So like when I walk into the house and I close the door and I sit and I click on sports and no one is supposed to interrupt me while I'm watching, is it because that's what I saw my father doing? Or is it because that's actually what I believe I should be doing?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of need for us to introspect, for us to ask ourselves questions. Unfortunately, many times we don't want to confront ourselves because we're going to discover and realize certain things that will make us think, no, actually, you know what? This doesn't work. I was reading a book, Yakanzi, It Did Not Start With You. A brilliant book. I forget the name of the author. But it's one that makes you really pause and think, Joshua, why am I doing all these things that I'm doing? Celia, I have got to say, this has been a very fruitful conversation. And, I wish you all the best. I wish you success. And I hope, with your business that you're going to go across the world and you have Mandialo franchises all over the world. If, that's a way that a woman really has to lead.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me.